I recently read a fun little crime novel from 1951, The Metropolitan Opera Murders. As that red banner indicates, this was reissued by the Library of Congress, a part of their Crime Classics series, and it was written by Helen Trubell, and we need to talk about her for a moment. This is part of what makes the book interesting, the backstory. Trubell, however you pronounce her name, was a huge star at the time she wrote this book, but not a literary one. Here she is from one of her acting credits. I don't know if this was television or film, but so was that it? Was she an actress? Eventually, yes, but only after already being famous. Kind of a cool font there, by the way. Here she is on film again from 1954's Deep in My Heart, but like I said, it wasn't acting, and we know it wasn't writing. Like, what was her calling card? It was her singing. She was a celebrated opera star in the mid-20th century, and she performed, guess where, at the Metropolitan Opera in New York, where, of course, the book is set. She was best known for her roles in Wagner operas, which explains the costume here, and she decided to write a murder mystery set in the world she knew so well. Now, that's a unique perspective for a writer, but put a pin in that, we'll read the back cover blurb. A scandalous and satisfying behind-the-scenes look at the glamorous world of opera, from an insider who was herself the lead soprano at the Met for many years. Originally published in 1951, this wry tale was the second of two murder mysteries penned by the multi-talented Helen Trubell. And that is what I would call a case of false advertising, and by the Library of Congress, no less. Or are they just reprinting the original back cover? I don't know, but what I do know is that the introduction reveals the book was ghostwritten by Harold Q. Mauser, seen here, and this guy would go on to write many crime fiction novels. Here's the list, got some fun titles in there, like Send Another Hearse. I like that one. And so his involvement is a little disappointing if you kind of read about the book and are interested in it because of Helen Trubell's background and the fact that she supposedly wrote it. But it doesn't mean she had no role. She had, I would guess, a big one. There's no real information about this, about how the collaboration went. But it does take place in her backyard and is just stuffed with all kinds of insider intel on the cutthroat world of high stakes. This is at the Met. High stakes opera, the backstabbing, the politics, the affairs, the desperation to either become relevant or stay relevant in a highly competitive and highly visible field. There's also the money, just all kinds of stuff like that. You might have noticed I pointed at a footnote there a second ago. There are some in-depth footnotes about the Wagner world and music history for those who are so inclined. I'm usually the kind that always reads the footnotes, but I did start skipping at some point. They really are like encyclopedia entries. Now remember that this was published by the Library of Congress under their Crime Classics line, but if it was a classic, it's not much of an enduring one. Here's a first edition, granted pretty beat up, but a first edition that you can get your hands on for just $30. But let's get to the plot, right? Let me read the blurb about that. First and super quickly, I'll say this is a fun cover here. This is my favorite one that I saw. I'm not going to zoom in on it because I think it'll come out real blurry on the video. So anyway, here we go. As soprano Elsa Vaughn sings the role of Brunhild during the second act of Richard Wagner's Die Walküre, she notices that prompter Rudolf Salz is making funny faces. Then he starts convulsing, grabs his throat, and falls down the steps to the orchestra pit. He's dead. Detective Lieutenant Sam Quinton must figure out who would want her dead. Is it her understudy, the ambitious Miss Helda Semple? What do opera financier Stanley Debret and his family have to do with the murder, if anything? Or was the poison truly intended for Salz, an embittered, formerly world-famous Wagnerian tenor, now reduced to coaching other singers? When a second murder takes place, Vaughn can no longer deny that she may be a target. And yeah, that gives you the gist of it. Here is the Met, by the way. And here's what some modern productions of Wagner, including at the Met, can look like. But overall, is the book any good? Well, it is. It's fun and unique in the way that it blends this world here, high society, New York opera crowd and opera professionals, mixed with the standard detective fiction and murder mystery tropes. That's the real sweet spot that the book finds, the niche it occupies. Now, I'm generally against celebrities, having books ghostwritten for them and slapping their name on there, but clearly all the behind-the-scenes opera stuff, which comes off as very authentic, is because it comes from Trebell, so I do think she was highly involved in the creation of the book. And in typical fashion, the mystery is well handled. You will find yourself wondering towards the very end, so who is the killer and who were they actually trying to kill, you know? So, a nice little curiosity and an easy read from 1951, the Metropolitan Opera Murders.